Someone born in 1935 paid 2% of their wages into Social Security. They collected benefits for 12 years on average. The ratio of workers to retirees was 16 to 1. That is not a system. That is a gift. Someone born in 2003 pays 12.4%. The ratio is below 3 workers per retiree. Same program, same promise. Completely different math. The mechanism did not change. The demographics did. The Congressional Budget Office says the trust fund buffer runs out in 2032. That is 6 years from now. After that, incoming taxes cover 77% of promised benefits. A 23% cut, automatic unless Congress acts. They have not acted yet. You are currently paying into a system where the return on your contribution is projected to be near zero or negative. That is not a political opinion. That is the arithmetic of a chain letter that has stopped growing fast enough. The question is not whether it breaks. The question is who pays. If this is the kind of analysis that is actually useful to you, subscribe. I break down financial systems the same way every week, calm, concrete, no fluff. The metaphor I want to use for this entire video is a chain letter. Remember it. A chain letter works perfectly as long as new participants keep joining. The first ones get an amazing return. The later ones pay more and get less. Social Security is structurally identical to that. Not corrupt, just arithmetic. In 1935, the birth rate was high, life expectancy was lower, and people collected benefits for maybe a few years. The chain had many more new participants than old ones collecting. By 1950, 16 workers funded each retiree. The money was so plentiful, Congress kept expanding benefits. It felt limitless. It was not limitless. 3 things happened. Birth rates dropped, life expectancy extended. The baby boomers started retiring, all 3 at once, slowly, then all at once. The ratio went from 16 to 1 to 5 to 1 to 3 to 1. It is now below 3 and still falling. By 2030, it is projected to drop below 2. Think about what that means. In 1950, each retiree's benefits were split across 16 workers. Today, they are split across fewer than 3. If benefits stay the same, the cost per worker nearly triples from the original design. To keep the chain going, you either need more participants or each participant to pay dramatically more. Both paths are already in motion. Here's the first escalation. Most people understand the problem at a surface level. They miss why it is specifically a Gen Z problem. The chain letter timing matters. Early entrants got paid well. You are entering at the worst possible moment. You will pay the most for the lowest return. The payroll tax right now is 12.4%. Split between you and your employer, 6.2 comes out of your check. If you are self-employed, you pay all 12.4 yourself. Every dollar up to $184,500 is taxed at that rate. In 1937, it was 2%. 2. Over the decades, as the math got tighter, they raised it 20 separate times. The last increase was in 1990 when it hit 12.4. 20 raises in 60 years from 2% to 12.4. And the math still does not work. The chain keeps requiring more fuel. The options, according to every actuary and economist, are the same 3 they have always been. Raise taxes, cut benefits, raise the retirement age. Some combination of all 3. Every serious proposal involves some version of those. And here's where the chain letter timing becomes your specific problem. The people who entered in 1950 paid 2% and collected for years. The people retiring now paid around 12% for their whole career and are collecting at the promised rate mostly. You are paying 12.4, facing a system projected to run out of its buffer by 2032 and will collect around 2055 to 2065. The Congressional Budget Office said in early 2026 that the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund will be exhausted in 2032, not the full system, the buffer. After that, income and payroll taxes would only cover about 77% of promised benefits. A roughly 23% across-the-board cut automatically for every beneficiary. You are currently 20-something. You will not collect for 30 or 40 years. Every reform between now and then will be paid for in some combination by your labor. That is not speculation. It is the arithmetic of who is still in the system when the bill comes due. There is a second layer here that matters more for how you should think about this. It has nothing to do with the trust fund depletion date. It is the return problem. Most people imagine Social Security like a savings account. You put money in, you pull it out. That is not what is happening. Remember the chain letter. Your contributions go directly to current retirees. There is no account with your name on it. No investment. The trust fund is not a market portfolio. It holds special issue government securities earning a fixed low return, not equities. The money is not growing for you. When you eventually retire, you are not withdrawing your savings plus compound growth. You receive a transfer payment funded by the workers alive at that moment. Your return on 40 years of forced contributions is whatever Congress promises you minus whatever cuts get legislated between now and then. Here's a simple scenario. Imagine you earn $50,000 a year starting at 22. Your payroll tax is 6.2%, about $3,100 per year from your check. Your employer matches that. So 6,200 enters the system on your behalf annually. Over 40 years, that is $248,000 total contributed. If that same $248,000 had been invested in a broad stock index fund averaging around 7% real returns per year, it would have grown to somewhere around $1.2 to $1.3 million by retirement. That is not a guarantee, but it is the historical ballpark. What does Social Security give you for that same 40-year contribution? The average monthly check in 2026 is around $2,081. Even if your benefit lands slightly above average at $2,500 per month, that is $30,000 per year. To break even on your contributions in pure dollar terms, you need to collect for more than 8 years. To match what a private investment would have returned, you would need to collect for decades. And that is at the current full benefit rate before any projected cuts. People born in the early 1930s got a return estimated around 4% real. People born in the late 1950s saw that drop to around 1.4% real. For Gen Z, projections put the real return close to zero or negative. That is the chain letter math. Early participants got the deal. You are late. And there is one number that changes everything about this. We will get to it. Let me do a mini case study. Call her Maya. She is 23 years old in 2026. She just started her first real job at $60,000 a year. She is sharp, reads about finance, knows she should save. Her employer offers a 401k with a 3% match. She signs up, contributes enough to get the full match. Maya puts in 3% of $60,000, which is $1,800 per year. Her employer adds another $1,800. Total of $3,600 going into her 401k annually. Her payroll taxes are also coming out every single paycheck. 6.2% of $60,000 is $3,720 going to Social Security per year, plus another $3,720 her employer pays. That is $7,440 entering Social Security annually on her behalf. Maya is sending more than twice as much to Social Security as she is building in her own 401k. And of those two streams, only one has her name on it. If you are still here, you are exactly the kind of person this channel is for. Most people clicked off 3 minutes ago looking for something that felt better instead of something that was true. Fast forward to 2065, Maya is 62. She has worked for 39 years. The trust fund ran out in 2032. In the years that followed, Congress debated and negotiated. They raised the payroll tax modestly. They pushed the full retirement age to 69. When she finally claims at 69, she collects a benefit that has been adjusted to reflect roughly a 15 to 20% reduction from what was originally promised. Meanwhile, her 401k, if she kept contributing and adjusting it over time, has grown into something meaningful. Not the full retirement magic number of $1.46 million, but a real asset under her control. The irony is that the thing she was forced to contribute the most to, the one she had zero control over, is the one that underdelivered. The thing she voluntarily contributed the least to, the one she could control, is what actually helped her. This is not Maya being unlucky. This is the structure of the system for people at her position in the chain. The brochure in 1947 said a foundation of economic security for American workers. Now it says a partial income supplement not intended to be your sole source of retirement income. Same program, updated expectations, no refunds. Let me escalate further. The second order effects are where it gets genuinely dark. Social Security's political economy is almost perfectly designed to protect the status quo. Specifically, the status quo as it exists for people who are already collecting or about to collect. 71 million people currently receive Social Security benefits. Those 71 million people vote at very high rates. The AARP is one of the most powerful lobbying organizations in the United States. The political cost of cutting benefits for current retirees is enormous. The political cost of changing terms for people who will not retire for 30 or 40 years is essentially zero. This is not a conspiracy. It is just incentive alignment. Politicians respond to voters who will penalize them in the next election cycle. Gen Z is not going to vote against a congressman in 2026 because of what might happen to Social Security in 2055. So watch what actually happens every time the reform conversation comes up. The proposals that gain the most traction always protect current beneficiaries and near retirees completely. Changes fall on future workers. The retirement age gets raised for people entering the workforce now, not for people retiring in 5 years. The benefit formula adjustments affect younger cohorts more heavily. The tax increases fall on current workers. You might be thinking every generation had it hard. And to be fair, that is partially true. The Great Depression generation faced worse. The difference is structural, not rhetorical. Previous generations entered a chain that was still growing. The birth rate was higher. The workforce was expanding. The ratio of workers to retirees was sustainable. You are entering a chain that has already peaked and is shrinking. That is not the same problem. When the Social Security Fairness Act was signed into law on January 5th, 2025, it expanded benefits for about 2.8 million public sector workers who previously had benefits reduced. Good for them. But it also accelerated the trust fund depletion date by roughly a year. The people who benefited were already retired or near retirement. The cost of that acceleration will be paid by people who are currently 22 years old. There is no malice in this. The incentive structure just perfectly rewards short-term benefit expansion and defers the cost to people who cannot vote the current politician out before the cost arrives. This is the chain letter economy running in real time. The earlier participants redeem their position. The ones still in line pay more. Imagine you found out your gym membership automatically renews. It goes up every year. The gym is getting increasingly crowded. And when you finally show up to use it in 40 years, they tell you the pool is closed and the treadmills run at 77% speed, and you signed the contract when you were born. Good deal. Third escalation. This is about the thing people think is the solution, which is not actually the solution in the way most people think. The common advice goes something like, yes, Social Security might not be what it was, but you have the 401k. Just max it out and you will be fine. I am not going to tell you that is wrong. Maxing out your 401k is correct. You should do it. But I want to talk about why framing it as a clean substitute for Social Security is slightly misleading. The 401k contribution limit in 2026 is $23,500 per year. That sounds like a lot. The average Gen Z 401k balance, according to Fidelity's Q4 2025 data, is around $17,900 total across all the years they have been working. The average Gen Z savings rate going into a 401k is around 11% against the recommended 15%. Millennials average about $83,700 in their 401k. That sounds better until you realize the magic retirement number people say they need is now 1.46 million. 83,700 against 1.46 million. That gap is not getting closed by contributing 11%. The chain letter assumes you have one income stream and one retirement vehicle, and the system will handle the rest. That assumption was maybe defensible in 1960. It is not defensible now. The second structural move is to understand the compounding gap and use it. Every dollar you put into a vehicle you control at your age has 40 years to grow. The difference between putting $3,000 per year onto a broad index fund at 23 versus starting at 33 is not just 7 years of contributions. It is potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in compounding returns. The 401k, the Roth individual retirement account, the taxable brokerage account, none of them are perfect. All of them are better than the chain letter in terms of your actual ownership and control of the outcome. The Roth individual retirement account deserves specific mention here because taxes are almost certainly going higher over the next 30 years, not lower. For the reasons we just discussed, the government needs more revenue from somewhere. Locking in your tax rate now when your income is lower and the political environment has not yet been forced into restructuring Social Security's financing is a structural advantage that most people in their 20s do not take seriously. The third move is to think about income architecture, not just savings rate. The deep problem with the just save more advice is that it is input focused. It treats the problem as a function of how much you contribute to retirement vehicles. But the actual variable that matters most is how many income-generating assets you own outside of your labor. A business, a side operation, ownership in something that generates cash even when you are not actively working. This does not need to be complex. But the people who end up with the most financial flexibility in retirement are overwhelmingly not the ones who save the most aggressively in employer-sponsored plans. They are the ones who built or bought things that generated income without requiring their time. The chain letter continues. You did not choose to enter it, but you can choose how much you depend on it. My paycheck mandatory, no opt-out. That money goes directly to someone who retired years before you were born. The deal is that in 40 years, the people working at that time will fund yours. But the ratio of workers to retirees has dropped from 16-1 down to below 3. The trust fund buffer runs out in about 6 years. The political system has every incentive to protect current retirees and defer costs to future ones. And the alternative retirement vehicle, the 401k, requires income, access, and consistency that millions of Gen Z workers simply do not have in sufficient quantities. That is the mechanical reality of the situation. No villains, no conspiracy, just a system designed in 1935 for demographic conditions that no longer exist, maintained by political incentives that favor the people who are already inside it. So what do you actually do with this information? The first thing is to mentally reclassify Social Security in your financial model. Stop thinking of it as a retirement account you are contributing to. Think of it as a tax you will receive a partial, uncertain rebate from in 40 years under conditions you cannot control. That means your actual retirement planning needs to happen entirely outside of it, not as a supplement. As the whole plan, Social Security becomes a bonus if it arrives at the level promised and a known variable if it does not. Either way, your financial security cannot depend on it. The chain letter will keep running. The question is whether you are standing on it or you are the one who figured out where it goes. The people who entered early got their deal. You are late. That is not unfair. It is arithmetic. Subscribe if you want to keep getting this kind of analysis. I break down financial systems the same way every week. Calm, concrete, no fluff. That is the deal.